And I just want to welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Circe Lecomte. I'm co-CEO of BCPH, and today's webinar is the fourth and final in our webinar Health-A-THON, celebrating the end of a healthy 2023. Today's selection is the joint BCPH Harvard T.H. Chan School of Health webinar called Transcending Visibility, a Dialogue for Transgender Day of Visibility. Everyone who registers and watches today's webinar is eligible for a certificate of completion. They simply have to submit the evaluation, which will be sent to you at the end of this webinar. If you wish to learn more or to participate in courses that draw on our webinars, you can visit the BCPH Academy at bcphacademy.org. Let me introduce and hand it over to my colleague.
Thank you, Dr. Circe. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us the last of the Health-A-Thon for 2023, but stay tuned. We will have a number of different webinars in 2024 as well. That's all I'll leave it to, and hopefully you guys have a great time. Feel free to ask questions or send us emails.
Wonderful, wonderful. So without further ado, let me get us started.
Yes, okay, amazing. So we are going to get started. Thank you everyone who is here in person. For a little bit of context, this presentation is hybrid, so thank you to everyone who is on via Zoom, but we're also in person here at the Harvard School of Public Health. I have some classmates, friends in the room, so thank you everyone for being here. So today we're here to talk about Transgender Day of Visibility. So the title of our session is Transcending Visibility, a Dialogue for Transgender Day of Visibility, where we hope to celebrate gender diversity and promote health justice among these communities. Sorry, thank you. Just some IT support in the background. But as I was saying, thank you everyone for being here, in-person attendees, Zoom attendees, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So, I skipped. So a little bit about myself. My name is Nancy Quintanilla. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I am an MD, MPH student, MD at UCLA, and in the health policy track here at Harvard. And just to situate myself, so I am a first-gen cis woman, and how I interact with the trans community, I am an aspiring urologist and gender-affirming surgeon, and I have the lived experience of being othered, and this was something growing up that really inspired my reasoning for going into medicine. So I use that as a motivation, and it drives my passion to work with these communities. So I'm a health policy fellow as part of my practicum at Boston Congress of Public Health. And with them, I wanted to provide a little bit of background. So this is a nonprofit organization whose goal is to transcend boundaries in academia and medicine. We are social justice focused and oriented, and our CEOs are actually on this call. If you'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you so much, Nancy. I'm so incredibly excited to see all of the individuals who have signed up today for this Transgender Day of Visibility. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Carpenter. I'm one of the co-chief executive officers of Boston Congress of Public Health. Lovely to see you here. Hope that you continue to engage with BCPH in the future.
Yes, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Carpenter just said. I'm just incredibly moved and I'm honored that you would join us today. And many, many thanks to our esteemed panelists who will be sharing their
Here, hope that you
experiences and
continue to
thoughts
engage with BCPH
to
in the
Nancy's
future.
questions. And thank you to Nancy for putting together this wonderful event.
Thank you. And we ask that you stay engaged with Boston Congress of Public Health. So these are some of the ways. Feel free to check out our website as well. So I wanted to start by thanking our sponsors. So here at the Harvard School of Public Health, the Health Policy and Management Department, as well as the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for supporting this event in person. They're funding our lunch. So many thanks goes out to these groups. And as I mentioned, this is part of my practicum. So in a very academic way, I have some objectives for this talk, largely around informing people about some of the challenges faced by trans individuals and encouraging a dialogue, promoting visibility, and empowering everyone who is on this call and here in attendance with the knowledge and tools necessary to be effective allies for trans communities. So if you will take just a second to complete this pre-survey, I would very much appreciate it. 5 questions. I'll give you like 30 seconds to pull it up and do that. It links to a link tree. So it should be the pre-survey. It's part of the same link tree, so you can access it even after you've done some of that. This is a pre-survey.
I can't access the link. I'm trying to. It won't let me. Oh, there it is.
Michelle and Nancy, I was able to go into the chat and to push out the link to everyone so that they can, if they're not able to type it in, they can click on it.
Amazing.
Let me know if that works for you, Michelle.
Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and continue. So wanted to provide a brief history of International Trans Day of Visibility. So also known as Trans Day of Visibility or TDOV. It's an annual event on March 31st. So you haven't missed it yet. This day is tomorrow. And it's dedicated to celebrating trans people and raising awareness about the discrimination faced by trans people worldwide. But mostly it's a celebration of all the contributions to society by trans people, sort of as the flip side of Trans Remembrance Day, which is in November and really highlights the loss of life of trans people, which is a very important issue. But this event and the day tomorrow, Trans Day of Visibility, is meant to celebrate those trans individuals who are with us and contribute to society in so many ways. So again, thank you all for being here for this celebration. And so just now transitioning into, you know, what we're here for, I wanted to pass it on. Wait, actually, there's one more. So quickly to talk about the difference between sex and gender. So sex and gender, not the same thing. Sex is very much something that is assigned or presumed at birth based on biology, anatomy, chromosomes, but gender is really a social and cultural distinction where, you know, it's multidimensional and is different for every individual. So really encourage people to routinely ask about sex and gender and someone's gender identity, ask about pronouns, and also wanted to make the point that there is not one transgender community. There's so many communities and individuals of different race, ethnicity, sexualities, So not everyone who's trans is gay or identifies a certain way. So always, you know, not assuming is the goal and really message of this conversation. So, and now with that was this transition I wanted to make to our esteemed panelists. I have a little design here, you know, to transition everyone into our panel conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can see everyone's lovely faces and hear about their experiences. So I think it'd be great if everyone can introduce themselves. So if you don't mind starting us off, Taylor.
Hello, everybody. I'm Taylor Chandler. I'm a board certified transgender care therapist, published author, and global speaker on intersex and transgender rights. This is very near and dear to my heart as a stakeholder who was born intersex, as well as identifies as trans because I'm not the sex I was assigned at birth.
Thank you. Madeline?
Hey, so I'm Madeline. My pronouns are she, her. I recently graduated with my MPH from Boston University. I am involved in, currently I work as a project associate with the Massachusetts Medicaid Agency. And beyond that, I am involved in many different projects towards the goal of health justice for all marginalized communities. And some of the, much of the activist and academic work that I've been involved in over the last 7-8 years has been specifically with a focus on multiply marginalized transgender communities and individuals. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you. Michelle, would you mind going next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle. I'm transgender. I currently am an advocate for the community for harm reduction and also trying to help people get their hormone therapy as well to take care of their trans health.
Thank you. Tamika?
Hello, my name is Tamika Spellman. I am the Policy and Community Engagement Manager for HIPS in Washington, D.C. Pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've done quite a bit of work for and about drug users and sex worker health and safety. I've done consultation with Rokana and Ayanna Presley on a couple of bills and halls of Congress. I am also a member of the Urban Survivors Union, and I do participatory grant making with a couple of different foundations.
Thank you. Thank you all. So now transitioning into the questions that we have for today, and anyone can answer or I'll call on someone, but someone share, what does visibility mean to you as a transgender person and why is it important? Madeline, if you don't mind, Madeline.
Sure, I'm happy to start it off. So visibility is complicated. At least my knowledge of it within the trans community is that trans folks, especially trans folks who are gender nonconforming, visibility is often we're often hyper visible. We're often visible to a point that that results in violence against us. So gender nonconforming trans folks of color, folks who are who are not white and cisgender passing, especially, can have a particularly difficult time with being visible. There is importance to, or being hypervisible more accurately. There is importance to like culturally to trans folks being, you know, out and about and having media representation that accurately represents us. And there's importance to making sure that that representation is diverse, that it shows a wide spectrum of who trans people are. But in our day-to-day lives, visibility can be very difficult for individual trans people because of the many forms of violence that that many of us experience on a day-to-day basis on account of being read as transgender by others.
I appreciate you sharing that. I ask the rest of the panelists, what are your thoughts on what Madeline just shared about hyper visibility and that posing a danger to trans people? Do you have thoughts, Tamika?
Absolutely. And I definitely concur because I am not like the perfect representation of a woman. And I have been attacked because of that. You know, I don't like being singled out in a crowd, which happens often because I'm tall, I'm Black, you know, I'm noticeable. And having that being so hyper visual to people can be distracting and cause unwanted attention. You know, when I just want to fit in, you know, and I feel like sometimes society plays a role in how we are perceived because nobody wants to give us these opportunities to be part of normal society, like the way that we have to work. Too many of us are bound to working in nonprofits. It would be nice for us to be seen as capable of doing more than just being part of like the academic part of things or in the nonprofit world. We need to be in other industries, which increases our visibility in a different way. So we become more so normalized in society instead of like this new thing that's coming out. This is not new. I've been doing this for 40 years. So this isn't new for me. It's not new to other people. And this is something that has been going on in a long time in history. You know, and it was just that a lot of us really kind of stayed in the closet. I'm not a closeted person. I don't like that. It is unhealthy for me as a person. And when I decided to make this transition a permanent thing for me, people didn't like it. And they tried to push me back into that closet. Well, that closet kills. It kills.
Tamika, can I ask a follow-up question about that? Sorry to interrupt, but in your process of coming out to yourself and others, what were some of the things that helped or hindered in that process for you?
Family not understanding. You know, family not understanding who I am. I'm not, the only thing that really changed this is outward appearance. The core of who I was is still the same. I'm still the person that you brought into this world. I am still the child that you brought up in this world. It's just I changed my outward appearance to what's comfortable for me. And my comfortability means more than anything else. When I was not comfortable, I was not happy with myself. I didn't love me. And when I wasn't loving me, I did chaotic and destructive things. When I gave that back and said, I don't care how anyone feels anymore. I need to be happy in and of myself. I grew so much. My life changed visibly for people to see, and I felt it in myself. I'm doing more things that are productive today. I have been able to get back into doing advocacy work and do some meaningful things. You know, and this isn't for me. I know how to live a quiet life and, you know, keep the violence away from me. But what about others? This isn't about me. This is about how we change things for those that are coming behind us. I don't want people to suffer like I suffer. So I'm here to try to change these narratives. Let us come and work on Wall Street. Believe me, we have the capabilities. We can be doctors, actors, leaders in business and industry.
Tamika, I appreciate your point about representation in different industries and really having, that visibility through representation. And I wonder, Taylor, what does this look like for you and your career path with your consulting group, or, generally?
Visibility for me, I lived stealth till I was 41. I was outed in the media. It was very difficult for me. I hated labels at first. Losing my privacy and my anonymity was torture. I felt it was mostly in my head, but I felt like everybody all of a sudden knew and was looking at me for all the wrong reasons. It made me become socially reclusive for a long time. But then through a local advocate named Savannah Wanzer, she got me involved in volunteering. And by volunteering, I learned how to use my platform for good, and it gave new meaning. And then, of course, now I see the value in labels to some degree and what it means to others that are maybe going through something and need to see themselves in somebody else. So I do see the importance in it. But even with all that said, if I could go back to being just anonymous, I would. Not everybody's meant to be an advocate because they don't want that visibility. I didn't at first, but now I've grown into it. And, I'm proud of the lives that I've touched. It feels good when you have trans youth bloom and blossom and come alive just because you talk about your existence and history and then what you've gone through. And I tell my story often as a cautionary tale so that they won't follow in the same footsteps as me, because there's way more resources now than there were, 40 years ago. That's for sure.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties here in the room. Presentation stopped projecting, but I will try to address this in tandem with asking more questions. I wanted to make sure that Michelle also has the opportunity to answer this question. What does visibility mean to you? Why is it important?
Visibility is important because the more we're visible, the less judgment that people will be displaying upon us. I feel like right now I work at a Safeway, and I did a good job. I've been here about a year. I've been working hard and doing a good job. And so now I'm about to be a manager here. So, I think that also goes a long way towards our visibility in other fields other than nonprofit.
Yeah, it sounds like a theme of having representation of trans individuals in all sectors. And congratulations on the promotion, Michelle. It's very, very exciting, to have opportunities and, paving the way for so many people behind you. I want to change to another question. So what are some of the biggest challenges? We've talked about some already, the hypervisibility even existing as a challenge for trans individuals. But what are some other challenges, and specifically, are there policies that you've found that have been difficult or pose challenges in your life? Madeline?
In terms of policies, one of the ones that immediately comes to mind in terms of making things easier for trans folks is the decriminalization of sex work. Something I've been working on with some folks here in Massachusetts, that other states are working on gradually. The decriminalization of walking while trans bills, where bills where, or laws where police will harass trans folks for existing in public, for having condoms on them, and for sure, I mean, to make that more explicit, it's overwhelmingly Black and brown trans women who are continually harassed and assaulted by police for existing in public. So those are two that immediately come to mind as really important. I know that Florida also just recently passed some kind of bill or some kind of law where I think it's what is it called? It's like a trial kind of law. It's a temporary kind of thing where they are providing there's a word for it, like a stipend, I guess, up to a certain point for trans folks in that area of Florida. I believe it was in Florida. Because trans folks, by and large, I mean, if you look at, the population level research of the population health research, we by and large have difficulty getting jobs in the first place because of discrimination. We have difficulty getting raises in those jobs, of reaching higher levels of responsibility within those jobs. We have difficulty with accessing housing and of keeping housing, of many different indicators of material progress, of materially being material indicators of quality of life, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's not a coincidence that many trans folks, especially trans folks of color, especially trans femmes of color, end up turning to criminalized sectors of our economies to find work, because that's where they can find work, because people overwhelmingly, trans folks of color, trans femmes of color overwhelmingly have very difficult time finding or securing and holding on to criminalized or non-criminalized work because of systemic, individual, interpersonal forms of transphobic, transmisogynist, transmisogynoir discrimination.
Yeah, Tamika, in your experience with your organization, would you agree that Madeline made about the criminalization of a lot of sectors impacting trans individuals?
Absolutely, to include housing, because that is one of the things that is critical in sustaining life. We don't have great access to shelters either, and working with these entities and telling them that you bring more strife to our community by trying to separate us, then fix what's wrong with what you're doing now. Fix what exists, and then you can add us into these equations. You bring more problem to us if you single us out by saying we're doing this specifically for the LGBT community. Well, I don't need you making my relationships with people that are already hairy more hairy. You know what I'm saying? If you're supposed to be fixing things, you might want to come to the community you're trying to fix these things with and take seriously what we bring to the table. This is one of those problems that a lot of these government entities that are working towards finding solutions for us keep making these missteps. You're not involving us in the process of creating these things. You're never going to be able to adequately address the problems that we face if you're not including us in these conversations and in design and implementation of how they play out. I am not going to respond to a program that is led by a cisgender person. I would rather someone like me be administering a program. It makes it easier because it's more culturally competent. You know, and that's where we have a lot of these failures and systems and things, is that there's zero cultural competence dialed into anything. It's fit in this box or else go find something else. There's no flexibility. You know, we need support with housing, first and foremost. If I have a stable home, then I am able to do a lot more things. 2, I need access to a living wage job. Working at McDonald's is not going to cut it. Seriously. They're still fighting for $15 an hour when 15 hours an hour now is a joke. We need to be at $27.50. That is a living wage, especially if you live in the District of Columbia, New York City, or Los Angeles. You need a wage that's going to pay you enough to be able to be self-sustaining. That is what minimum wage was about when it was created. So when we have all of these systemic changes that have put us at the bottom of the food chain, and things have not significantly changed. I mean, there have been leaps and bounds in comparison to where I was when I was 25 as opposed to a 25-year-old today. And I am glad for the change, but it took too long and it has not been encompassing. So we're still having to do these type of panels to talk about our needs. We have been the one, along with gender non-binary folks, femmes, that have been left behind out of the LGBTQ banner. Lesbians and gay males and folks that identify in those categories are very well taken care of, and they take care of each other. We don't get that support. We do not have the same infrastructural fit in like they do. You can fit in as a lesbian, you can fit in as a gay man in the white patriarchal systems. But where do we fit in? We have been ostracized. So this is why we have to continue to keep fighting as hard as we do for scraps. I'm tired of scraps. It's time for us to have the full Monty.
Tamika, I so hear and appreciate your passion and sharing you know, your point of view on so much that still needs to be done. One of the things you mentioned was about including trans voices, right, as these decisions are being made. Taylor, could you talk a little bit about what can we do to ensure that trans voices are heard and represented when it comes to policy discussions and decision making in these spaces?
Like Tamika said, it's going to be a fight. You know, right now, ostracize is an understatement. They don't want us on to be decision makers. The political climate in this country right now has made trans a target, and it's not so much about being trans or what trans means. It's about appealing to a base to obtain or maintain power among white, cis, middle-aged men in power. It's just frustrating because it's great that we're on this panel and it's focused on trans visibility, but we need to be on panels that have like nothing to do with trans to put forth a voice as to what those issues mean to us. And right now, you know, with the shooting in Nashville, now we're terrorists. You know, what I tell people is that individual just happened to be trans. That's not the governing point of why this all happened, I don't believe. And you know, anything that they can do. It's like, who knew going to the bathroom was such a weapon? You know, when I go to the bathroom, I go in a stall, I pee, I come out. wash my hands, maybe touch up my lipstick. If I like something somebody else is wearing, I might compliment them, and then I'm out of there. You know, they make it sound like we're swinging from the chandeliers naked in the bathroom. Like with Leah Thomas, you know, they're accusing her of being an autogenophile, saying that she was, you know, forcing her genitals on the other girls in the locker room. In all my years of being in this situation, most trans people I know, when they're faced in those circumstances, are timid and shy and want nothing to do with being seen, heard, or anything. They're trying to just do what they got to do and get out of there. They're not, once again, swinging from the rafters with their kibbles and bits, you know, but they use all this propaganda. They use these bills. They use all of this to weaponize us and make us seem bad, you know, that we're mentally unstable. So now that we shouldn't be able to have guns. You know, we need to have guns because we're under so much fire, especially Black and brown trans people. You know, they're Black first walking out of the house. That puts a target on them. And then to be trans in addition is like a double whammy. You know, I encourage people to go to lobby days, to be very involved with their local government entities. And whether they're accommodating or not, stick with it, be in their face, make it so it has to be an issue, start petitions. You know, we have to use our voices and numbers to accomplish things that aren't being accomplished right now.
So you said, Taylor, there are trans Black people who walk out and are Black first and also trans. So this brings up a point that we've talked a lot about, intersecting identities. So people who are not just trans, but have, and, you know, like everyone occupies so many identities in so many different spaces. How do some intersecting identities, so race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, how do they impact the experience of trans individuals? Madeline, do you have some thoughts?
Sure. I was wondering if Michelle had anything else to add though first.
Absolutely.
Oh no, I definitely agree with everything you, Tamika, and Taylor said. Like, there's definitely all major points about our community.
Yeah. And then I in terms of your question, I would add that I mean, so I'll say it this way. I mean, I am a disabled woman. I'm a trans woman. I'm non-binary. These aspects of who I am impacts me every day. I mean, I've had difficulty getting jobs. I was unemployed for most of the last year, almost, because I was applying to job after job after job, and then they would interview me and suddenly they would never call me back. And that happened in undergrad, it happened in grad school, it's now happened after grad school. I was housing insecure, borderline homeless for most of undergrad for those 4 or 5 years. And I mean, yeah, I mean, lots of things. I've dealt with lots of different kinds of marginalization. And at the same time, I also am white, and I come from a wealthy background, a wealthy family. So things have been hard for me, and there are also ways in which my experiences have not been as bad as they could have been. I was still able to go to a university for undergrad. I graduated. It's one of 2 trans femmes at the whole, of the dozen or so trans femmes that I knew at the undergraduate university, 2 out of the 12 of us or so who actually made it to graduation. I think there were 2 of those 12 who were trans women of color. Neither one of them made it to graduation. I mean, I made it to and even finished grad school. I mean, those are all indicators largely of privilege, of wealth, and of whiteness. So, I mean, as many difficult experiences as I've had in my life, there are also ways in which I have been privileged. And I try to use what privileges I do have access to, of whiteness, of wealth, to use them intentionally, to draw attention to the ways in which folks who are not privileged in those particular ways are experiencing violences, or are marginalized in one way or another. So I think when we're talking about intersections of identities, we often talk only about the ways in which we are marginalized, but I think acknowledging the ways in which we also experience privilege is also an important fact, an important statement to make.
Oh boy. Intersections of identity, my God. How many do I have? Let me start rattling them off. Definitely Black, transgender, grew up in the Rust Belt, Buffalo, New York. Knew of a trans woman in 1974, but then also growing up and hearing how badly they talked about them, and the premise that you had to be literally crazy to want to get above being a male to be a female when they're like the bottom of the food chain. Dealing with having been a parent at an early age and falling into sex work, and then having many years of experience as a drug user, and definitely living with a learning disability and having attention deficit disorder. The intersections. Definitely been homeless multiple times, and struggling just to survive as a trans woman for many years, trying to work and then continually having to do sex work as a way of making ends meet because the jobs didn't pay shit. I couldn't get a really good job because I was on drugs. They would want a drug test. So I was stuck working in dead-end jobs that didn't want to advance me. I could do everything, every job in McDonald's, but they would not give me a managership. They did not want to give me a raise. So I kept quitting, and I go back into sex work full time because I have children. They have to eat. So I had to do what I had to do with all of those intersections, wherever I was in the country, because I traveled quite a bit. And because of some of these things, I had some very negative interactions with police. I was a tall, slim, long-legged beauty when I was young. And they took advantage of me. Some of them would extort money from me. A lot of them would rape me. It's not wanted when it's something that's being forced through. I would rather have went to jail. But these are some of the things as a Black trans woman and the intersections of identity I had to deal with while still trying to live, take care of my family.
Michelle, are you available to also answer this question?
Yeah. Like I can say that I've been through a lot of what Tamika's talking about, discrimination against jobs, having to do survival sex work, experiencing drug addiction and overcoming my drug addiction. And I mean, it was a hard battle, and I just would just want to help the people that come after me, so they wouldn't have to go through that as much as I did.
Taylor, is there something you'd like to add about intersecting identities in trans communities?
I agree with everything everybody said. I come from a wealthy background too, but when I left home, that all went away. It didn't come with me. My family was wealthy, I wasn't. But it was even privilege in doing that. I wasn't kicked out, I chose to leave. And then I emancipated and took my family to court to get custody of myself. And I was homeless. I couldn't eat, but I had a Chanel purse. I quickly had to learn the value of $1. But at the same time, I had the privilege of being white and passing. So I always had resources. I always could go to places and see myself in other people. And what's unfortunate is we live in a country where we don't value Black lives from the top all the way down. And until that changes, until systemic racism goes away, it's going to be that much harder for someone that's also trans. Because there's already, like I said before, a bullseye on someone just being Black and driving, being Black and walking, being Black and existing. And then you add on to that being trans or non-binary or queer or whatever, it just makes it that much harder. And we need to change this. There needs to be representation in government. Because as long as white cis men stay in power, I feel like it's always going to be this way for Black and brown communities. And, when I get pulled over by the police, I'm annoyed. I'm going to be late. I don't know what it feels like to have to put my hand on the steering wheel, to have to worry if I'm going to get lied about, raped, beaten, murdered, to have to teach my children to fear police. These are things that just dramatically need to change. We need to invest resources into Black and brown communities, especially those that are trans and non-binary. Like Tamika said, you can do all these trainings, you can do all these different things for the community, but if you can't provide an actual sustainable job with those trainings, what good is it? Things definitely need to change from the top on down. We need to vote more so that there's more diversity in government, that there's more people like us in government, but definitely more Black and brown people in government that are really stakeholders, that are change makers.
We've talked a lot about the challenges and some calls to action for including trans people in a lot of these spaces and talking about intersecting identities. I think now something I'd really like to leave the audience with is, how can allies best support transgender communities, and what are some concrete actions that you all would recommend to promote inclusivity and equity and injustice for trans communities? Tamika, do you have some thoughts?
Yes, donate money, give them money. Do not worry about what it's being used for, because it's likely going to go to housing first. Secondly, it will be for food and transportation. But give them money. I'm about to embark on something new in the last quarter of the year, where I'll be trying to provide housing for trans women here where I live at. You can donate to my GoFundMe. That would be helpful. Give us money so that we can work and do for ourselves. I want to help these young women so that they don't have to live a life like I did. I want them to be able to go to school, get job training, or learn what it takes to be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, open your own business, And please, by God, hire us. Give us jobs. We need jobs outside of nonprofits. I mean, it's a good place to get a start at, but they don't pay the best. You know, and that's just real. Give us jobs in meaningful ways that pay us a living wage. We need to be jobs.
Sorry. Jobs
Real
and put your money where your mouth is, donating. Michelle, do you have thoughts how allies can best support trans communities?
I can just agree with what was said, you know, jobs, definitely donating to like a cause for transgender homelessness, you know, education for transgenders, you know, just training programs, everything, you know, all that will help everybody become, you know, more self-sufficient and less like wanting to do like survival sex work because they have to, you know.
Adeline, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, mostly just agreeing with what's said, with what's been said before in terms of supporting trans folks. I mean, whether it's you know, making sure that we have the we have opportunities to you know, get higher in whatever careers we're pursuing, or if it's supporting trans entrepreneurs, or if it's supporting nonprofits that are buying for trans folks. Like someone mentioned earlier in the chat, they asked, what is the best way to support and volunteer locally in the Boston area to support trans folks? And the answer is like, I answered them with what I answered them with was, I mean, there's the Trans Emergency Fund of Massachusetts. There's Black and Pink's. They started a new Alexia Narena House for housing trans formerly incarcerated folks. There's Trans Resistance Massachusetts. There's the Trans Asylum Seekers Support Network in Springfield, which has regular fundraisers in Boston. So there's trans folks are ingenuitive. We're smart. We're creative. We come up with solutions to things. We find a way to get through. So it's really, really important to put your money where your mouth is, as was said before. Like, yeah, you can say you support trans folks all the live long day, but if you're not materially supporting us, because that's, at the end of the day, that's where our most marginalized community members are most being harmed, I guess, is materially. So supporting us in material ways is so important in so many different ways. And then I guess supporting important policy changes too. When I mentioned the you know, writing your legislators to decriminalize sex work and to get rid of walking while trans bills and laws and things of that sort. So there's lots of great ways to support trans folks that are being led by trans folks.
Taylor, do you have some recommendations for allies?
Yeah, first and foremost, just be kind. You know, it sounds so simple, but it's something that we don't do. Social media has made it so easy to be vile and spew hate. In addition, if you use your pronouns, I know there's a big debate over it, but when you share your pronouns, it makes it safe for somebody else to share theirs. Have gender affirming restrooms in your place of work. Just let trans people know that you care, that you want to be an ally. And, you know, there's so many that do, but right now, because we're under such fire, I think people are scared in a lot of ways to support us because of the backlash that they will get. But at the end of the day, when you're doing the right thing, sometimes you walk alone, and that's okay. But allyship is vital. You know, if you own a business, employ a trans person. If you do trainings, offer them for free to some trans people. If you have self-defense classes, definitely offer them to trans people. There's so many ways to be an ally. And you can use whatever you do, whatever your community is, to do things. You could do a fundraiser. You could get other people involved. It's not that difficult. It's, at the end of the day, it's just being, you know, a part of humankind.
Thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen just to share some wrapping thoughts. Very much echoing, you know, some of the ways that we've talked already about being an effective ally and advocate in a very academic sense. Scholarly journals you can subscribe to, Transgender Health, in research include trans and gender diverse participants. Here at the School of Public Health, if people are still around, there's an amazing class taught in the Women Gender Health Department about the health of trans and gender diverse people. So in more broader community sense, volunteering for trans organization, attending community events like this, supporting trans-owned businesses, like we heard, employing trans folks. And I think, like we've echoed and talked about, being kind and having genuine friendships with trans people, just like you can't say that you're an ally for Black, Latinx people if your friendship circle isn't reflected by that. So please consider all of these, and I'm very sorry we didn't have time for questions. I hope some were answered in the chat. Just wanted to end with this post survey, get final thoughts from people on you know, sort of what you learned from this event. And I hope that everyone goes forward with knowing now Trans Day of Visibility is tomorrow. Find ways to start implementing some of the recommendations that we've spoken about, you know, to be an ally, to be an advocate, and take that with you. I am going to have to close down. I'm so sorry we didn't really get to answer questions, but thank you.
We'll
Thank you
collect
so much.
the questions and we'll post the answers as appropriate on our website. You can also email us directly at communications@bcph.org. And we hope you'll visit our site, bcph.org, to learn more about this webinar and other programs that we have going on now and coming up. We're just so excited about the incredible comments and ruminations on policy today that took place. And I just want to congratulate Nancy on organizing a very successful event, and also to our panelists for being who they are and offering some very cogent commentary. And also major shout out to our audience today. These questions
So that is the end of our webinar for today. Thank you so much for attending. If you guys want to be able to see more of these, go to bcphacademy.org. This webinar, as well as the other webinars that were hosted this week as well as last week, are on BCPH Academy for free. And as I mentioned before, make sure you check out the spring webinar Health-A-Thon. Did you have a few more words to say about that, Circe?
Yes, Dr. Carpenter. I just wanted to let everyone know that our spring semester of webinars is now listed on bcph.org. We'll be notifying folks through our emailers about those that are coming up. They are taking place on Wednesdays from January 3rd to March 27th at from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, please check your email and complete today's evaluation. And thanks so much for joining us. Did you have any parting words, Dr. Carpenter?
I'm all set. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.